Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Literacy View. Well, we haven't done this in a while, but it is a Takeaway Tuesday episode. Woo! And we are using our back to school episode with Carl Hendrick. So if you missed it, now is your chance to be inspired to go back to that episode. It was on defending the science of learning. We used Carl Hendrick's article for grounding our discussion. There were so many nuggets in it. Judy and I looked at each other and we said, we definitely need to talk about this episode and have a Takeaway Tuesday episode. We have with us a very special guest. We have Vicki Ferrari. And Vicki has many years in education. She was an educational leader for 17 years. She was a principal and instructional coach. And she is currently a national leadership consultant. And her company is CIA Educational Consulting, LLC. And what we really think is great is that because she is a leader in the field and she has leadership experience, we thought having a Takeaway Tuesday episode with somebody who was a principal would add another dimension. And I don't think we do this enough. We want to hear from the people making the decisions in schools. And I think that you are an ideal person to join us, Vicki. We're so excited to have you. But before we get started, Judy and I want you to know that we also do consulting services as well. And our services are for school districts, administrators, teachers. We do in-person and online.
Also for parents too, for parents.
And for parents, ranging from pre-K all the way up through the grades. It's going to be fun. We don't do anything in a boring way. So get in touch with us because we
are some of our specialties. One of our biggest specialties is retreats. We love doing retreats where the workshops look completely different. You might be drinking wine. If it's in a school, you're not drinking wine, but you could drink something that looks like wine. We're going to get up and move. It's not going to be these boring PowerPoints. We've seen so much in the industry where it's just another snooze fest. If you bring Faith and Judy to your school, your district, your meetings, it's not going to be a snooze fest. It's going to be a whole different experience. The other thing, you're having a conference. You want Faith and Judy at your conference. I got on the plane and we went to Big Sky, Montana. We're ready to be at your conferences and do live streaming and podcasting and YouTubing. Who else brings that to you guys? Live on the scene. That was the most incredible experience. Thanks to Danielle and Terry. But we're available for other conferences. We want to be there. And Faith, the other thing that we're really looking for this year is sponsors. Now, if you're a curriculum publishing company, we don't want you because we want to stay unbiased. But if you're not, you know who to call. This year, we're looking for our top sponsors and affiliate hybrid models to sponsor the Literacy View podcast because guess what? Podcasting isn't free. And we have a lot of things that we need to cover, but we want some great partners. And you cannot be a partner unless we 100% believe in what you do and stay true to our core values. So we are very selective, but we're ready to nominate at least our top 3 sponsors of the year. So right now it's September. Spots are going to go quickly. So contact us at faithandjudy@gmail.com or our new business email, faithandjudy@theliteracyview.com. And one last thing, make sure we also have for this school year a newsletter that is going to have information that's nowhere else with hot tips, hot takes, no BS and cheers. Oh, wow. Faith's husband's in the background listening to me. No BS and cheers. You better subscribe. You got to go to www.theliteracyview.com and subscribe. It's not going to be BS. It's going to be good stuff with lots of value. So
that's right. So become an insider and sign up now. We want you. All right, let's get started. Here we go. So, Takeaway Tuesday, we are going to start off with what an administrator would get out of this episode on the science of learning. So, Vicki, I'm going to turn it over to you. So, what do you think a principal or a district leader, quick takeaway from this episode that they really need to know? What do you think?
I would say that the number one thing that I took away, it really sparked my background knowledge of understanding effective instruction. And not only effective instruction in terms of our students, but you all speak to this, effective instruction in terms of professional development for our teachers, professional development for principals, professional development for district leaders. All of that is, effective instruction. And I think that, you, Judy, talked about a snooze fest. Well, I will say that the majority of PD for teachers and for administrators and for district leaders is truly a snooze fest. It really is. And not to throw anyone under the bus or anything, but sometimes instruction in the classroom is a snooze fest. So, it's kind of like, what does effective instruction look like, sound like at every level of learning that's happening in our system? And that was the biggest piece that I took, because I always pride myself in, am I perfect? Absolutely not. I'm not even close to perfect. But I feel like when we talk about the science of learning, and he really made me think of Stanislas Dehaene. I hope I say his name right. I always mess it up. But, he talks about how we learn, how the brain learns. And one of the things he talks about is when we're learning something new, our brain can only handle one thing at a time, right? And so when we're thinking about developing our professional development for all levels of our system, district leaders, principals, teachers, paraprofessionals, parents, anything that we're doing in terms of learning in our system, we have to think about that Stanislas Dehaene talks about how the brain learns, that we have to have attention, right? And attention is all about making it a perky pace. If we think of Anita Archer, right? Like, we have to keep that attention so that we can attend to whatever the learning is. And we've got to have that perky pace. And when we're attending and we're engaged in the learning, we have to have opportunities to practice so that our brain can consolidate that learning, so that then we can apply that learning, right? So Carl really just sparked all the things that, all these things just kind of came together, converged for me when I was listening to him, because it is all about learning. And I think that when we think about leadership, I think that we are responsible for ensuring that we keep the learning. What's the main learning that we're doing? And protecting our staff to ensure that they have time to really solidify that learning. And
so let me interrupt you for a second.
Yeah,
so
go ahead.
Are you saying that the administrator needs to build that into the schedule in terms of giving teachers enough time, instead of it just being a one and done PD, that they have time to actually incorporate some of the things that they are learning, so that it becomes a little bit more natural for them? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm saying, yeah. So once I have that training, right? As I'm the principal, I'm planning out my professional development for my teachers or in staff or parents, whoever it may be. And I have to make sure that I have those clear learning outcomes for that professional development and be very transparent about what are the pieces that we're going to take away and embed in our classroom and practice and talk about and get coached on so that it becomes embedded in what we do in our classroom. And I don't think that we give ourselves enough time to really do that. We talk about, Carl spoke of this too, that we really need to give repetition and practice. That's part of a good lesson, right? That we teach the skill with gradual release. It's an I do, then we do it together. A lot of we do. And when I'm talking about an administrator and a staff, we are doing it together. I am in the trenches with you. The coach, if I have a coach, is in the trenches with you. And we're constantly doing it together and refining and talking about it so that we feel comfortable that we now have that. And it actually is producing learning results for our students.
Okay, so you said a lot right there. So Judy is an instructional coach in a building right now. And you said that the administrator would be on board with the instructional coach, working together to make sure that whatever the learning goals are, that there is they're aligned, that they're not moving in two different directions. So Judy, what was your takeaway for an administrator based on what Carl talked about?
So I want to also give a shout out, Vicki. Good job mentioning paraprofessionals. I think they are totally underutilized in a lot of schools and not involved enough in those professional development sessions. So principals, leaders, if you're listening right now, don't just have the paras just doing whatever. They are capable. They are super helpers for those teachers, and get them involved, especially with the science of reading. Keep them as current as your teachers. So my main takeaway was that professional development very often should be data driven. I don't think that a lot of the sessions are based enough off of data. I think it's very often, like Faith mentioned before, those one and done things. Today we're doing this, tomorrow we're doing this, and things are very disjointed. I think it's really important not to just look at your BOY, beginning of the year, MOY, middle of the year, EOY, end of year data. I think we need to look at how are kids doing, and are they making progress, and who are we targeting? I think that a lot of people in education now, it's all a numbers game, but we have to remember that these kids are actually real people. And we're not just thinking who's a slippable and who's a pushable. We're thinking about every single kid. This is the new buzzword, slippable, pushable. They're all our kids. And every kid in that classroom matters. So it may be a numbers game for you principals, but these are lives we're dealing with. It. Every single kid in that classroom matters. So stop wasting teachers' time and make sure that your instruction for those teachers is very data-centered and practical. I wrote down, stop wasting teachers' time with generic sessions and, like Faith mentioned, that are disjointed and not connected. Prioritize explicit instruction PDs that actually implement classrooms. It's very easy to say, today we're going to do the gradual release, and today we're doing the mini, and tomorrow we're doing the we do portion, and then nothing happens. Make sure that what you're training teachers in is actually happening in the classroom. And I want to take it to another level. Principals, if you're telling teachers and coaches to do it, let's start modeling as well. If you think you can do it better than we can, or you want to be part of the equation, start showing that you can model as well, because sometimes expectations will become clearer if we actually see you doing it as well.
So my takeaway was about checking for understanding. And Carl mentioned that, how he would choose that as his top priority. And I think that administrators need to know what that actually looks like in terms of checking for understanding. So It could be all different ways that kids demonstrate their understanding, whether they're using a mini whiteboard or, they're responding sometimes as a group and you're noticing who might be off task. But I do think administrators need to be trained, not just expected to look to see what they think kids are understanding, because that can fool you. We want them to really know what that looks like. What does it mean when you're in a classroom and you want your teachers checking for understanding, really authentic checking for understanding? And then the teacher needs to respond to that checking for understanding. So let's say they see that there are kids who don't understand something. Well, now what are you going to do? And so it's not just enough to say, well, this kid didn't get it. That becomes part of your plan, not just a lesson plan that gets handed into someone, but that becomes part of the next lesson or the next week of lessons, where you're going to use that information to really drive instruction. So that was what I would say for an administrator. Next one, parent perspective. All right, so what does that mean? Key takeaway for a parent is, what would they have to know about the science of learning as a parent? So, Vicki, we're going to bring it back to you. If you had to give a parent some advice, what do you think the takeaway would be from this episode?
I think, again, it brings me back to one of the things that I wanted to lift up that Carl talks about. And there's a researcher that speaks to this, and I put it a lot in my PDs that I do when I'm in national conferences, that type of thing. And it's about how many repetitions our brain really needs to actually become fluent or automatic with anything, and when I'm working with parents or anything, I have them remember back when they're learning something new, and how long and how many repetitions did it take them to actually solidify it. And actually, so we don't even think about it anymore. We just do it, right? Mm-hmm. So like a typical learner, the repetition, this is a researcher, it's James Korn, Korn, and it's a research that is actually was put into the educational psychology. I can't remember. It's 2016 educational psychology, and I can give you the research around that. But a typical learner usually will take about 1 to 4 repetitions before it actually solidifies over time, over like 3 to 4 days when it's something new that they're learning. Where more complex skills are 4 to 20 repetitions over time and spread out. And then our neurodiverse learners need 200 to plus repetitions to become automatic. So I always tell parents, hey, Vicki might just need some more repetition and more modeling. It's that old, parents, you say, well, I already told you how to do it, right? Well, I needed someone to show me, and I needed someone to give me time to practice it, right? Before it became something that is just automatic. So I think that's super important for parents to know, that it's just because
You want to know something, Vicki? I chose the same thing as you.
Did you really?
Yes. This happens a lot with Judy, where we're thinking on, about the same thing. And that's exactly what I wrote down. I said parents should be responsible for making sure that practice is accomplished at home, correct practice. So it's not that parents have to start becoming the teacher of new information, but I do think that if we were going to give parents a tip, the practice is really where it's at. And to be able to accomplish that number of repetitions, that homework would be the practice and making sure it's correct, and to give that feedback when they're, not on track would be helpful if they're capable of doing that. But at least making sure that there's a set time for practice and a place for practice going on, because long-term memory, as Carl said, is where it's at. And the information can only move into long-term memory with practice. Judy, your turn.
All right. I feel like the odd man or odd woman out. Mine was a little bit different and totally different this time. So something that Carl said really spoke to me as a parent, as an educator. He said, I don't want someone to prejudge what my kid is capable of before she has a go or a try at something. And I think that is so important for parents to make sure that when their child is put into a classroom, that there's a communication with the classroom teacher. Okay, your child has a certain maybe disability or maybe something going on. Please don't prejudge my child. Let's monitor and see what is the data saying and what does my child need. Because sometimes in education, we make assumptions, and that's not responsive teaching. Yes, we know that there's certain things that children may go through, but Carl was, he spoke from the heart. He spoke about his own child and how he hopes that as a system, that because his child has, something going on or a certain condition or something, don't prejudge, okay? You cannot just assume because a child has a certain label that is exactly what, every lesson is going to be what the child is struggling with, or that the child's going to have the same exact, symptoms or behaviors as another child. So don't assume.
I love it.
And also push for high expectations and clear instructions for all kids. There's research to support that explicit instruction doesn't work for some kids. It works for all kids. So parents, if you're not seeing explicit instruction in those classrooms and what's happening in those classrooms doesn't sound like it's aligned with the science of reading or the science of literacy or the science of learning, communicate. Let your schools know.
And I'm just going to add something. Parents, you might not know what that looks like either, explicit instruction. Like, what does that really mean to you?
Well, and that's why they have to call Faith and Judy. Groups, right, Faith?
Yeah, well, exactly. So if that is something that's not clear to you, then you have to, say something. You have to say something that you want to know. You heard that this is very important. As a parent, I'd like to know what exactly that looks like. And hopefully there would be someone in your school building who would be able to.
Faith, I got to push back. The unfortunate truth is that not every school is following what's best for kids.
I know that. I know.
So what do they do then, Faith?
Call Faith and Judy. I don't know what else to say. All right, let's go on to the next one. There we go. All right, teacher perspective. All right, so now we're looking at a takeaway for the teacher. So something that could be pulled, whether it's practical or some sort of information, a nugget that they need to know. So Vicki, we'll bring it back to you.
Yeah, I come back to, his focus on a well, engineered, if you will, lesson. And I like to call it a learning plan rather than a lesson plan because it's really about, Judy, you talked a lot about in that session, which I just absolutely loved, bringing up programs. So if I'm a teacher and I am being told I have to do this program, whatever it is, with fidelity, I like to say, let's change that to integrity, because thinking's required and we need to make sure we have our learner in mind when we are preparing to deliver a lesson. And so rather than, but teachers also need modeling for that. They may not know how to annotate a lesson in whatever program they have to make sure that they are doing the gradual release based on where their students are, right? So I feel that that is something that a principal, a coach can, make a focus, that we're going to sit down together and we're going to have our learners in mind. And my lesson delivery might look different than Judy's because I have different students in my class, right?
I'm going to just jump in for a second. So both of you use the term gradual release. So for those people listening who don't know what you're talking about, think about it as the teacher takes the lead. At first, I do, then we do, meaning teacher and student or students, until it's turned over to the students for independent practice. So the teacher is gradually releasing that responsibility to the student. So I just wanted to be clear, because sometimes we assume, right, on the literacy view that everybody knows the lingo, and they don't, and we don't want people turning it off. So I hope that clarifies what we're all talking about. Sorry, Vicki.
No, we have to be able to do that and not assume that folks know, everyone knows what we're talking about, because that's what this is about, right? Is to learn from one another and to gain new insight. So I appreciate that. So yes, gradual release is really how much support the teacher's giving and how much they're pulling back from that support based on where the learner is with that skill. So let's just say that I am teaching, val teams, and val teams can be tricky, right? So me as a teacher, when I'm designing my learning plan, I might have to do a lot more we do choral response with the teacher to get them to that fluency, right? Because I know that they might struggle. The data is showing me that they're struggling with val teams. So I'm going to give them more support throughout that lesson. So to me, that's what I took away from Carl, is we have to be designing our lessons with our students in mind versus, it's not the program that's driving our instruction. It's our kids that are driving that instruction.
Okay, Judy.
All right. So for me, Carl said something. There are strategies that on average will produce a better effect than others. You have an ethical responsibility to children, particularly those from disadvantaged backgrounds. So, Carl, oh my God, I got a little bit of validation. I've been saying strategies are important. Carl agreed. Strategies are helpful. They are part of showing kids explicit instruction on how to do something. And I love when Carl mentioned that, we have that in medicine. We have that in other professions. Why do we not hold that same standard for education, where there's actually research-based methods on how to do something need to be incorporated into our classrooms? Some of them that I wrote down that are key, like Faith mentioned. Faith, we are on the same page tonight. You never know what could happen on a different episode or at any minute on the Literacy View. But whiteboards, they're a great check for understanding. They make thinking visible. So many people are just rushing to get through the lesson. But how do we know? Are the kids getting it? Can I clear up a misconception right on the spot? And I've gotten actually pushback from teachers about whiteboards, which is funny to me. They're like, well, principals might want an artifact. So snap a picture of those whiteboards. If you need an artifact, then put it in your little binder or put it on whatever you want to put it. Whiteboards are amazing. They're better than a thumbs up and a thumbs down, because thumbs up and thumbs down, 50% luck of the draw, right? I might have put my thumb down, up or down, and have no idea what you're talking about. Also, like Faith said, checks for understandings, key. Provide specific, actionable feedback. Don't just say good job. Don't just say bad job. The brain wants to hear what it's doing well specifically and what it needs to improve on. Don't be afraid to hurt kids' feelings by telling them They didn't do something right, and explain to them what they need to do next time and show them how to do it. That's it.
So for me, I loved what he said when he mentioned it's not about what works for you, it's what works for the child. Now, that is something that I say all the time. It's not about you. I must have said this on the show. I've said it during professional development with teachers, because I think that is so important. We have to move away from our own preferences as teachers and think, even if it might be a little bit boring for us at certain moments, it's our job to make it interesting to the child who needs maybe those 20 repetitions or 200 repetitions. So again, we have to move away from what we like, and we have to think about what's best for the child. And that really, to me, that hit home as a teacher. That's your responsibility. You know, a lot of times teachers will say they don't like certain things, or they'll cherry pick certain parts of a lesson that they do like and leave out something else. That is very different. And I want to be clearer about that. That's very different, because Vicki said something about moving away from fidelity into integrity. That is very important, the integrity of the lesson. But at the same time, it's not about, well, I don't like this and I do like that. It's about that the kids don't need maybe something from that particular lesson, and they do need something else. Well, that's making a good decision, because it's based on kids' needs, not on teacher likes or dislikes. So that was my takeaway. All right, let's move into the research nugget. Vicki,
Faith, I want to tell you I'm very proud of you. This is our shorter content, and so far we're at 32 minutes.
Okay.
I'm proud of you.
And do you mind if I love what you all, both of you brought up, and from a principal lens, from a leadership lens, I'm just going to tell you, I never had my teachers turn in their lesson plans, ever. First of all, I don't have time to look at them, okay? And it's not about me, right? When I'm in your room, together, we're partners in your classroom, and you're doing your thing, that tells me that you have done a learning plan based on what your kids need, right? And so,
oh my God, Vicki, I have to interrupt you.
Yes.
That's so funny that you're saying this. As Faith was speaking, I was thinking exactly the same thing. When we design lesson plans, it's so often to please these principals. How often is it really about the kids and the needs of the kids?
So I think we should all press a BS button together.
Let's
give a BS to lesson plans that satisfy people when it's so out of touch with reality. Let's do it now. That was BS. Yes, I would agree.
Wow, Vicki and Faith are getting wild tonight. I'm loving this wild.
You ladies inspire me. This goes everywhere with me around the country now.
All right, do you take it to professional development? Vicki, where do you use your BS button in the field?
It's always in my bag, and it always reminds me, like I might not say or pull it out, but it's like a comfort thing for me, It's
oh my God, it's like Linus and his
it is
from snooping. That's funny. Vicki, I know I have to be quiet because this is faster paced content, but I take it sometimes when I travel to these conferences when people ask us to join, and my BS button starts talking at the airport, and it's like I'm on the TSA line, and all of a sudden it's like, this thing is bullshit. This is BS. This is BS. And I'm like, oh my God.
All right, ladies. I got to break this up. All right. So research, let's go on to the research nugget. So what does this mean? So if there is something that we could take away that's really an evidence-based nugget that Carl mentioned, what would that be? Vicki, you're on. Let's go.
Well, I think that for me, again, is that the research shows that effective instruction is not a matter of chance, right? It's not a matter of chance. And that is not just the learners in the classroom, the students. It's the district learner, the adult learner, right? Effective professional development is not a matter of chance. We have to be very thoughtful and intentional about what we're providing in terms of professional development. And Judy said it great, because I'm all about being data driven. That is my number one thing. Like, why are we doing professional development on backwards design when we know that our teachers don't know how to do whatever, because the data is showing us that, right? So I always am about, like, I love it. It's always in my head. Nothing should be left to chance. Nothing.
Okay. Judy.
Dun, 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 dun. Learning styles have been debunked a while ago, a long time ago, but we keep seeing it pop up on social media. Science of learning shows what actually works. We're not evolved to read letters and language. You need explicit instruction from an expert as well. So please, you may have a learning preference, but that is not your learning style. So I no longer walk around saying what I used to say, because I monitor the research. I used to say I'm a visual learner. I don't go into PD saying that anymore. And this is crazy. It's not easy for me to be confrontational. I don't enjoy being confrontational, but my beautiful co-host Faith Borkowski has taught me to be a little bit of a badass. I am now able, when somebody says they have a learning style, I channel in my inner Faith and say, well, actually, the research actually suggests that there is no learning styles. That may be your preference, but that is not your learning style. There's research and evidence to say how we learn. So let's follow that evidence.
Okay. And that was great. I loved what he said when he talked about long-term memory. And he said, what we have in long-term memory determines how we see the world. And so the research shows that kids will reconstruct their understanding of whatever they're learning based on what they already know. And so if we just assume that they have some foundational knowledge in order to understand something a little bit more complex, yet it's on shaky ground, they are not going to have the same takeaway as what maybe you want them to have. So we have to level that playing field. We have to make sure that kids are starting out with some foundational knowledge, because they are going to make a game of telephone out of it. It's not going to be exactly what they should be walking away with. It's going to be based on what they already know or what they think they know. And unfortunately, Judy and I were talking about this. What do kids know? They're getting their information from TikTok and social media and all these other outlets where it's distorted information. So if we think that they already know something, they likely will have a twisted view of what you want them to learn. So that to me really hit home. Okay, last but not least, student outcomes. So what is it that we want to see when we're looking at data? What's that student outcome based on what we learned from Carl Hendrick's defending the science of learning. Vicki.
The number one thing, it's simple. Did they actually learn it? Can they do it independently without me? Right? Same with teachers. Is it embedded in what they do in their practice? Principals, are you instructional leaders? Can you see what's happening in classrooms and give feedback to teachers? It's all about solidifying learning and being able to do it on your own without any support anymore. So that's really what we're doing here, right? And I will say, it's again, it goes back to that repetition, giving not only kids enough time, but giving our teachers enough time to really practice so that it becomes solidified in our brains, that it's in that long-term memory. It's about, is it really learned or not?
Judy?
So with kids, we need to be flexible. We need to be responsive. We need to not make assumptions. Even when we're planning a lesson, you might have put that these particular kids are in your small group, but when you're watching the lesson, they did just fine. And you might need to select a different group of students. So be flexible, be responsive, give specific feedback to students, and they will thrive. That's it.
And for me, I think the big takeaway was critical thinkers know stuff. They know stuff. And so how is that related to student outcomes? If we're looking at just the end game, that is not about fairness, right? It's not fair. It's a matter of equity here. And we know that kids are coming in with different levels of understanding. So we always go back to never assume. You make an ass out of you and me, right? That's, the odd couple. And I think if we don't really cover basic information, it leads to inequity. So we cannot look at student outcomes without first looking at what kids already know, because we know that kids who can do that higher level work, that critical thinking, they know stuff. And we have to be able to give them that information in order for them to think at a higher level. All right, that does it for our Takeaway Tuesday episode. I want to thank everyone for joining us. I hope you had some other takeaways, and you could always write to us. You could put it in the comments when we post this episode. If there's something that you thought that we didn't mention here that was relevant to your own work with administrators, teachers, parents, students, please let us know.
Faith, I want to say one thing. So one last thing. It's a very tough time in our country for many reasons. And I just want to speak about how I think the Literacy View could be a model for the entire world and for the entire country, that people could have different views on a wide variety of topics. And we've created an environment where it doesn't matter. You can still have a conversation. And I think that, more of the world has to be open to having conversation. And that's what I'm really proud of on the Literacy View. You won't always see somebody like Vicki that might agree with Faith and I on everything. And that's okay. So just know everybody is welcome on the Literacy View. And we think that will shift the needle forward if we're able to have those important discussions together. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Faith is muted.
Faith is muted.
I almost went the whole show without doing it. Of course, at the very end, I did. Okay, I want to just thank you, Vicki Ferrari, for joining us. You are a delight. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.